Talks, the new normal for marketing. And we've done one more session on the new normal for branded content in the past. We'll be going live in another minute. I think we're live now. Um, yeah. So once again, those of you who've just tuned in, welcome to Samosa Talks episode 3 for this special series around the new normal. Today we are going to discuss the new normal in performance marketing. Uh, like, and this is something which is like a classic introduction which I would give to anyone when we talk about performance marketing. When we talk about performance marketing, like I recall a specific quote from John Wanamaker where he said in the past that half of the advertising I do is wasted, but I don't know which is that half. But performance marketing is the answer to that particular quote, and it has evolved over a period of time, and it becomes really relevant now because businesses are looking to revive. They are cash strapped. They are looking to find ways and means to drive more sales and more transactions. So, on the panel today, I have with me Ankit Banga. He's the head of marketing at India Bulls Housing Finance. I have Mr. Nilesh Kohil. He's the chief business officer and addressable, like for performance and addressable advertising at Merkle Sokrati. I have Mr. Prashant Puri. He's the CEO at AdLift. And last but not the least, I have Smita Murarka. She's the VP Marketing and E-commerce at Duroflex. Welcome to Samosa Talks, guys. It's good to have you guys here with us. For those of you who are tuning in right now, like we are streaming live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube as well. In case you want to join in there, there have been complaints in the past that I don't take questions from comments, so probably you can keep the questions to the last 10 minutes of the session. So let's quickly dive into the subject, guys. Uh, I'll start with Ankit. Ankit, you had India Bulls, like you had marketing for India Bulls Housing Finance, and I think we've met quite a lot of times in the past. And there was a time when we'd met before India Bulls Dhani was being launched as well, and then we met probably a couple of years later when we were talking about how performance played a major role for you to acquire your first thousands of customers. So Ankit, can you take us through the new normal for performance marketing from your standpoint?
Yeah, thank you, Hitesh, and hi everyone. Let's quickly dive down to performance marketing. I think it's an exploited term, performance marketing. I think every marketing that we all do is supposed to be performance, whether it is achieving us long-term goals or short-term goals should ideally lead to some goals that we are trying to achieve, and all of that should get bundled into performance as a concept. So over the last 3 months or 3 4 months, there has been a lot of change. Good thing is that the whole industry has been pushed to accept digital. So I was thinking, and I'm like, what this change would have actually taken another 3 to 4 years. We've just like the whole industry and everyone in the industry has been pulled to accept digital and digital marketing and platforms like now, and that actually gives us far more responsibility and far more dependence as an organization point of view as marketeers, because the role has significantly become far more important, because now everyone from the management, from business, from customer point of view, the only means of communicating or is more or less digital in its space. And therefore it's good from a marketer point of view, but it's highly challenging because the expectations and the result expectation from digital is also suddenly bypassed normal norms that people had.
And Nilesh, from your standpoint, and so Nilesh, you lead the business side at Merkle Sokrati. Again, it's one of the leading players when it comes to performance, and uh, I believe you guys have proven success with performance marketing for clients across sectors. So, like, how do you define the new normal for performance marketing in the current business environment, considering that every brand or every client you might have would be expecting like a miracle to happen given the current circumstances?
Yeah, thanks for having us, Hitesh. Fortunately, situation hasn't changed, right, for us in an expectation way as much, because client always demanded miracle of us, right, be it COVID or non-COVID. So that side of thing, I would say hasn't changed as much. Uh, I don't know the new normal, right? It's a evolving world, right? Especially over the last few weeks. But I could certainly tell you that performance marketing as a philosophy, right, has definitely got its much deserved push, right? Earlier, there has been always a debate between brand marketeers and a creative marketeers and a performance marketeers, and I think in many ways the world has worked in some bit of silos. But I think fortunately I see much more convergence happening, right? Much more debate around how to deliver results now in a more orchestrated and a collaborative way compared to in an earlier world. Um, so, for example, we see a lot more branding, right, is driven through performance now. So, a lot more measurement-driven approaches happening. We see a lot more offline budgets moving to digital and performance play, especially in the retail companies. I think the entire challenge around performance obviously has been that performance has been a little bit of a technical industry in a way, right? Performance marketeers have been more of a geeks rather than typical marketeers, right? So that's where I think so some of the challenges are, and I think Ankit rightly pointed out. Right now, we need to perhaps graduate to face the business, right, in a much more holistic way, rather than kind of remaining in our platform or a channel driven language and approach.
To hear that. Prashant, you again represent like you're the CEO at AdLift, and AdLift also has over the years built an entire ecosystem that focuses a lot on content and performance marketing. And again, you've had case studies of like driving performance for clients across sectors. So, like from your vantage point, how do you define the new normal for performance marketing?
So, the way I kind of look at it is everything that we've been trying for the last 6 months or 6 years is coming to light. Okay, what we've been really pushing for is customer retention, engagement, and a lot of times brands would be focused on new customer acquisition, right? And they're like, we want more, जो है वो तो ठीक है, but what about new? What about more? And in today's times, it's all about the customer. The current customer is your customer engagement, is your customer acquisition, right? Your customer engagement today is your customer acquisition, because people are now skeptical, or at least what we'll see, skeptical in spending, right? That's going to happen. That's also happening. They're spending a lot more time on research. They're spending a lot more time online. There was a report that came out, I think in April or end of April, where mobile data surged by about 35-40%. Digital ad revenues were at about, as of 2019, were at 15,000 crores, and TV was at 25. We'll see this gap close immediately and surpass this year. That's for sure, right? This was something that would have taken a lot longer. So as people are coming online and spending more time, new user acquisition is definitely important, but engagement has to be top of mind. This could be through organic content. This could be through social media channels. All of that comes together. Secondly, something that we've been evangelizing all the time is paid media is great, right? But performance doesn't only mean paid media. It means organic, it means content marketing, it means SEO. And that's something that for a lot of brands used to be at the back burner. But now we've actually seen a lot of folks actually wake up to the fact that organic is critical. You have to, there's a lot of research happening online and you have to be top of mind. You need to, ads are good, that's great. But organically showing up on your credibility at the right time is super critical. I'll give you one quick example, right? Where today we're using Zoom. Pre-COVID, I don't think people knew about Zoom. They might have known about GoToWebinar. And we at AdLift did a quick research. Pre-COVID, GoToWebinar's SEO or organic traffic was about 15% of overall traffic, whereas Zoom was at 65%, right? If you look at another competitor in the US, which the likes of Facebook use internally, BlueJeans, right? Again, they're a huge competitor to Zoom, but again, their organic traffic was at 30-35%. Now, I'm not saying product doesn't matter. Obviously, Zoom has a great product and all of that, but all of us suddenly jumped to Zoom because organically people were searching for video conferencing, right? And organically Zoom was coming up a lot more, right? So I think new normal is really focusing on existing customers, a lot more engagement, as well as organic. You have to tap into your organic channels like SEO and content.
Got it. Smita, you've been leading marketing for a lot of e-commerce brand, and in your current role also, I'm sure performance would be a major driver for you even before COVID. And at this point in time, I think like your teams would also be expecting a lot more from a transaction or sales point of view. So, like, how do you define the new normal for performance marketing from a e-commerce brand perspective?
Yeah, see, as a brand, it's very important to still carry the narrative. And as Duroflex, we've done a lot of brand building over the last 2-3 months, which was complete lockdown. We did not have an opportunity to sell online or offline. Right. So it is purely content-based marketing. But that does not mean that the platforms did not, are not conducive to do performance and finally convert. You didn't just activate it because you could not convert the consumer and sell. So I think today the platforms are so advanced compared to where we really started digital and performance marketing, as we call it, that it gives an option to activate it. And it's really in the expertise of the agency or the brand managers who handle it to use it. I think today the funnel, which is right from, getting the awareness to the final conversion, the time to that taken for that is very, very short. And we should make sure not to lose a consumer, because it's not like, they're going to take a lot of days or months to do their research and come back. Most of the category conversions, right from awareness to conversion, happens very quickly. So even if you advertise, let's say, a brand video on YouTube or an OTT platform, even on Facebook, you have an option to link your catalog and finally take them and convert them. So I think this whole divide, as many of us here have mentioned, between what's really brand marketing and performance is kind of bridged, mainly because of the way the technology has advanced on these platforms, on social platforms, as well as Google and YouTube, etc. And it's up to us whether we make most use of it. Finally, as a brand, we do want to sell. So that's our main objective. And the quicker we get to that, the better it is. So my advice to that is make use of all the functionalities that are available. If you have a campaign, what we try to do is in times when you're able to sell, you need to bridge the whole, communication on content as well as path to purchase in a very, very short manner. And make it quick, because really nobody has the patience to come back to a brand.
So that's an interesting point of view. And I think you and Ankit both mentioned the creative bit and the performance bit can't operate in silos. And I'll take cues from what Prashant was saying about how people think that performance is just about one specific aspect. It can't just be performance can't just be about paid, or it can't just be about social. It has to be a mix of things. So which brings me to the next question here. What are some of the myths that you have seen, myths or misconceptions that you've seen around performance marketing? One which is very common, in which I also come across, is that people say that what is the difference between affiliate and performance marketing? Is it one and the same, or like what makes it entirely different from performance? So Nilesh, would you like to throw some light on some myths that you've observed even in your conversations with clients, and like because you've been in the business, so you would also have had conversations within teams as well. So can you tell us about some myths or some misconceptions you've seen around performance marketing in the recent times?
Sure. So, see, I think the generally the one of the challenges that I mentioned, especially in the larger companies, is this entire orchestration amongst the different entities and teams, right, within the brand, right, especially the product team, the merchandising team, marketing and partnership team, and so on. So I think the myth here is that once we get like a performance mindset on, right, we can delegate it to a partner, right, and that typically doesn't quite fructify, right, because there's like Prashant mentioned, the product is important, right? The so-called direct channel CVR is the brand's responsibility in some ways, and that's where I think there is a lot of orchestration required across partners, right? And performance marketeer being the key responsibility that we play, right, to provide inputs and help navigate as we would have done across a number of brands and markets. The second myth I would say is around it perceived as a much more tactical, right? Hiring a whiz kid or getting a platform specialist, one or two, and generally it is felt as though we can kind of go from A to B. And that's where I think another myth is, because right now the world has become a lot more complex, right? As Sapna mentioned, I think there are number of channels that we have now, a number of creatives and platforms that we orchestrate on. So I've also seen a number of companies using a flashy tool, right, which is of no avail actually, right, because it is sold with a certain kind of promise, but for that promise to realize in an evolving world, it requires a lot more collaboration and orchestration. And the final myth I would say is that I think so far perhaps the CMO typically works a lot more independently, right, from a technology, but now data and technology especially play very, very core role, right, in performance marketing, and providing that so-called feedback loop, right, to the platform, and that's another area of in a way an opportunity. I wouldn't say it's a misconception necessarily, but it's a significantly larger opportunity to work with the technology and a data team, along with the marketing and a gamut of marketing that typically we do.
Right. And Ankit, like taking again, like taking the conversation from Nilesh to the brand side again. So I understand that the brand, like as like you are quite young in terms of your approach, and you've been very forward thinking as well. But not every brand would
He looks
have.
also very young.
What? I
said he looks also very young.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I like in my conversations with Ankit also in the past, what I've realized is that he's quite forward thinking, and like he's always been on his feet to try and experiment new formats and new concepts as well. So Ankit, from your standpoint, like Nilesh was mentioning, that a lot of the stuff that happens from the brand side happens either in silos, or there are different teams, and there is this collaboration gap that is there, and and that needs either like a marketing, like a brand custodian at the center of it, who can like synergize between the creative teams and the performance team and try to get that output which the brand wants. So you've seen, like from your understanding, you've seen these challenges coming in when you try to push for performance as a discipline within teams to the leadership teams as well, or like at your end the process has been smooth and like there are not many misconceptions at the brand side?
Yeah, I think a very relevant question at this point in time. So, Hitesh, Indiabulls as an organization was a traditional organization, and we have actually emerged from being an offline player to now being one of the leading apps from the financial category in terms of online. And obviously, it's required a lot of change in the thinking of the teams, at our end. I'm leaving the thinking of the management or of the business heads right now for a side, but even in the marketing team, as a group, we had like segments of teams, one handling branding, one handling campaigns, one handling digital, one handling creative, and blah blah blah. So I think one thing that we have now, over the last 3-4 months, we have dissolved is the whole wall that we had between each of these teams, and we tried to create a bridge. In fact, there's no bridge. Actually, everyone has to work hand in hand. So there is not even a bridge. You'll have to work hand in hand. We have made the creative people also responsible of the numbers that the campaign is delivering. And they should also know if they made A creative versus a B creative, how did it go? It's not just about making a creative and, sending it out and just handing it over and then just forget about it. So I think that there's a psychological, change that we have brought in each and every member of the team. It has taken us about good 3-4 months of counseling and talking to each of them to start thinking of what, just not having a calendar of say 11 things to do and just tick mark all of those and just get going with it, because that's not the way things are going to move forward. And probably that's how we started digital with, but that's not how it's going to move forward. Plus, every platform, every concept, every audience, everything that you're doing has to be thought through with that lens, and not that you can have one thing falls like okay for everything. One concept that works for everything. It does not work that way. A lot. So also we've also tried to inculcate and either upskill our teams from a thought process point of view, or we've tried to get talent which is slightly more skilled from thinking and from that point of view, because we have to evolve as teams and as people. Then only we will be able to handle this vertical or this function of a company in the right manner. And like I just said in the beginning, marketing will no more be a function of cost, which is not going to be the way organizations is going to look at marketing, and especially with the change that it has brought in, and it has brought a lot of people being dependent on this. So therefore the responsibility that comes in with this change will be far larger, and the ones who will be able to deliver efficiently on these responsibilities, on these functions, are the ones who will survive. So it's going to put each one of the digital marketers also in a fix. And because now you will be looked into an eye from numbers point of view, you will be looked into an eye from your contribution point of view, your thought point of view, your work point of view, and not just being a forward or just kind of that kind of a team from that point of view. Yeah.
Got it. And like Prashant, like Ankit mentioned, that it needs a lot of change in the mindset of a brand, and probably even skills for people to handle performance marketing as a portfolio from a brand standpoint. And that is what even Smita was talking about around like how it's really important to shorten that path to purchase and to have those ideal consumer journeys. So what is like how like what is the kind of vibe you get from brands? Like from like I'll ask about two types of brands. One which are very much on the table when it comes to performance marketing, and probably the ones you are pitching new business to. So what is the kind of vibe that you get about performance, and like do you come across some misconceptions which need to be addressed so that brands have a better performance marketing mindset?
No, this is not. This has got nothing to do with COVID, but
Yeah.
lots of times, what happens is when you're going in for a pitch, I think it's all good. all great questions. But then once you're onboarded, then it becomes A for apple, B for ball, right? And I would go back to what once Ogilvy said: if you bought a dog, don't do the barking. Let the dog do its thing, right? You got a dog for a reason, right? So I think from pertaining to what some brands do right or not, I think one key pitfall which I would kind of call out is leveraging the same KPIs across each performance marketing channel. I think that's a common pitfall that happens for some of the folks, where if you're doing PPC or you're doing display or you're doing remarketing or you're doing affiliates, it's one common KPI, right? Transactions at the end of the day, right? So there isn't a mechanism on figuring out if I am doing remarketing or if I am doing display, I should attribute a parabolic attribution, for example, or a first or a last, for example, right? It's following similar format. So I think one thing key is, as we are going more on digital, as lots of brands that we've been speaking to right now, were very dependent on Amazon, right? And then now they're figuring out logistics is an issue. So they want to go direct to consumer, which is fantastic. So it becomes very critical for brands who are going digital first to get the house in order, understand what video consumption means today, right? If someone's actually viewing my video, please look at it from a perspective of a TV, right? When someone sees a TV, immediately you're not looking at your website to see if sales came or app downloads happened, right? You did a TV blast, you went after reach. I'm not saying looking at it directly as TV, but give some leeway to video ads and consumptions versus saying it's a search ad. The second more important segment over here would be maximize what you currently have and have already tested out, right? Now, if people are, or you see certain brands are on channels like, let's say, TikTok, right? It might not be for you. It might be for you. Don't jump on it because you saw Pepsi doing an influencer marketing campaign. You're nowhere in the FMCG space, but you saw Pepsi doing it, so you want to do it, right? So it's great to test out new platforms, absolutely, but this is the time to really maximize what you have. Have you maximized your remarketing campaigns? Have you maximized your RLSA ads, right? Have you maximized Facebook's insights, right, to give you more data and further divvy down your ad sets, right, to maybe 15K and 20K versus blasting it across 2 million and then testing and A/B testing, right? Like someone on the panel just talked about, creative A/B testing. Have you done all of those before jumping onto new performance marketing channels, because it's a bright, new, shiny toy?
And Smita, like you were mentioning about defining better consumer journeys and even like setting in shorter path to purchase, like from your experience as a brand, when you measure the different avenues and when you look at like Prashant was mentioning about optimizing or maximizing opportunities across these avenues, do you have a metric in place as to see like which of the performance marketing avenues work? And if you've done that over a period of time, what are some of the things that you've learned that you think would help brands switch gears from a pure play digital mindset, like to getting more niche into a performance mindset?
Yeah, I think firstly, as somebody mentioned on the panel, that performance was never away from a marketer, right? We were all supposed to be doing performance. We were supposed to be helping sales all along. It's just that now it's more measurable, it's more transparent, and it's on a digital platform. So I think any marketer who didn't think that they were doing performance was probably not doing enough. Coming to the question of metric, I think that's a very valid question, because most of the times the mistake is made in setting objectives. A lot of times you confuse what is for the brand building metric and what is for absolute sales, and the weightages to be given. Some can do both, as I mentioned earlier. You can give the choice to a consumer if they want to finally convert on the same creative, or they just want to see it. So I think setting the objective itself is a starting point. A lot of content today on social is getting consumed on very topical, especially now with the lockdown happening. There's a lot of topical content that the brands are making. Again, you should stick to the topic that's best for your business in the long run. So for example, we are a sleep solution company. We are in the business of educating consumers about getting better sleep, and therefore we make products that help that. Now for the brand building part of it, we need to do the education route. And throughout the lockdown, we spoke about, how does sleep impact immunity? How do you rest? We did meditation techniques on our social media handles. So for that, all our matrix was on the views, the number of followers that we gain, the engagement, which is the most important. So these cannot anymore be only a social metric or something that is not resulting in sale, because the minute we lifted the lockdown, we saw a huge uptake in our standalone stores, which are on high streets, which opened first. So the minute, for example, Karnataka and Bangalore opened, Bangalore was one of the first cities that came back to normal. We don't know if it's normal, every day. That status changes, but as of now, it's the most normal city. Our sales came up to almost 70-80% of BAU, which was quite a surprise to us. So definitely there is a link in all the content building that we did over the last 2 months before that. So I think it's very important as an organization to be on the same page. As a marketing team, you need to educate the internal stakeholders on what is the exact objective of a particular campaign. In this case, we were all very clear that we were building our social media assets and a conversation engagement for the future buy. And the minute that opened, we connected the two dots very quickly. It's also, again, very important to know what your strengths are as a business. So again, as Prashant mentioned, if a topic is relevant, so for example, if sanitizers and masks and educating about wearing that is important, there's somebody who can do that conversation better. You're not in the business of that. So let's stick to the business that you're in the topics, and then finally make ads that serve that purpose. So people can make a much easier connect as well. This is our experience when it comes to conversing with our consumers. When it comes to Matrix, I think an internal context setting, absolute objective setting is most crucial. Even another change that I want to talk about, which has been a very pleasant experience for us, is we've activated our D2C selling, which is virtual selling, and through lead gen forms on Facebook and other platforms. Now, this is something that was always there, but not many businesses activated it because it was easier to get consumers to come to the store and convert. So some of these things which are already there on digital have become more important now because there's no other choice probably to that extent, and we are seeing success. So in our D2C virtual selling, our conversion rates are quite healthy, and then we've realized that we are able to sell much higher value products versus just putting it out in stores. So there are new matrix being created, new ways of selling. I think one important thing about digital marketing, which a lot of experienced people may fail in, is the ability to experiment. You think that because you have so much of experience, that's the best way of doing it. But I think digital is something that's changing so fast, and that's the experience is something you shouldn't rely on as a marketer. You should be open to trying out new things, and in your budget you should have something called an experiment budget, because that's the only way you'll get ahead of competition. So that's something that we try to do, make sure that we experiment in a smaller way, test if it's working for us as a channel or as a way of communication, and then we take it forward basis the success. So these few things are the ways in which you keep learning, because digital is a really very fast changing ecosystem. Added to that, the new normal. So you really need to be open-minded to try out a lot of new things.
Right. And speaking of Matrix, so like in one of the recent panels which I did, I was with a couple of leading content networks, and they were talking about how at times brands they don't like, because the attribution is so complex, they might not get the kind of returns they expect from a piece of branded content or an influencer collaboration. But if they look at the bigger picture while they are doing some content campaigns or influencer campaigns, their cost per acquisition also goes down. It might not be directly related to the content that has gone out or viewed, but because there is some affinity that is built because of that piece of branded content, their customer acquisition cost comes down drastically when all of this happens in parallel. So I think that is one factor, and that is one metric which probably brands and even agencies have to come together and figure out. And that has to happen not just from a specific creative or content agency, but it has to happen across agencies which have which belong to specific niche, right? From creative to digital to performance to even people who are just doing SEO for the brand. So like moving on to the discussion, I mean, Ankit, again, like I'll come back to our conversations which we've had in the past, wherein you've spoken about how performance has driven app installs and app transactions for Indiabulls Dhani, and you've been trying performance at least I think from the past 3-4 years now. So from your vantage point, again, what are some of the avenues which really work within performance marketing, and what are some of the untapped avenues that you might have observed all this while in your journey as a performance marketer?
Okay, so from an app angle point of view, since you mentioned Dhani, but Dhani has always been a performance brand, and good thing is that we were able to achieve some numbers which were satisfying to start with. So the regular avenues are the big two, which we all are aware of, which is the Google and the Facebook, and they have sophisticated app install campaigns that generally work for these. Other than that, you have a large number of programmatic tools available, which you will start, you'll start building your programmatic learnings for your campaigns, and they will, over a period of time, start becoming big in terms of performance. You also have your remarketing engine. So these are the most tapped and the most used platforms. What we have recently explored, and we feel that has led to an increased number of brand consideration, and also from point of view of people coming to our app. So we introduced a lot of games into our app because that was the need of the hour. So we realized that we need, and I think Prashant was mentioning about engagement as a very, very key tool in this period of time, because people are getting exposed to a lot. People have a lot of time in hand, and they are getting exposed to a lot of brands, and they're trying to test markets. And obviously, from a finance company point of view, we would want people to have the stickiness to our brand, specifically because there is a lot of moratorium happening, and people are feeling that there is no EMIs for the next 6 months, so they're in their own zone. So the biggest challenge that we all as a brand felt was to build engagement with our brand. So one thing that we tried to start was gamification as a tool. We tried influencer marketing. We used to do influencer marketing earlier, but I think there is a large amount of scope that's there in using the influencers correctly, and using the influencers, using the right influencers at the right time. Trying to see how to marry the what they're talking to, what you have to offer, and what is their specialization. Not just that what you want them to see, but what they are capable of, and what is their specialty, why people are following them, and therefore trying to. I think we as an organization even tried to put a lot of matrix to every influencer that we selected and we just did not select an influencer because he has say 28 million followers, because that's like really not making any sense to me. Even if you have followers, the biggest point is how much engagement does each one of them offer you, what is the cost he's asking for, what kind of comments does he get, because that actually shows stickiness towards his content and stickiness towards him. So so a lot of these numbers had to tie back together before deciding on picking up A, B, or C influencers. So so we did a lot of influencer campaign. We did, and we are still doing a lot of influencer campaign over this. The last and the important thing that is untapped is still content marketing. content marketing leading to performance. And I think a lot of US based companies do it fantastically. I keep seeing a lot of interesting ads and the way they try to funnel you in a passive manner that you won't even realize, but they have actually converted you into their own product. And while I think a lot of Indian brands are also trying to copy and see how to pick that up in, but that is one sphere that we all as performance marketers need to work and see how does the whole content strategy work. And that's where, when the creative teams, when we stop that whole differentiation between creative and brand and performance, and we start working as a team, we will be able to marry that very, very comfortably. So I think these are the three untapped and important avenues that people should look at over and above the big two and the big five that we use.
Got it. And like, speaking of influencers, so like you managed to have like a probably a metric, or like you can correlate performance with the kind of work you've done with influencers. You've managed to do that with whatever campaigns you've done in the past or recently as well.
Yeah, so we have tried to do a couple of things to measure each of their performances. So luckily, we are in a business of app. We were able to provide them separate links, especially when they were YouTubers. We could provide them separate links. We tried to measure a cost per view kind of an angle from the kind of views that they got, and versus if I would have just put a video ad on a YouTube or a video ad on any other platform, to understand whether what kind of cost I'm spending to that, and I'm obviously ready to pay a certain amount of premium to that, because I'm assuming that this is going to be a slightly more engaged audience who's looking at this kind of a content. So there is so selection and monitoring. We have tried to do it because we had the time. We were actually also trying to do one influencer a day, so we could measure, we could do that, multiple things we could do to really understand who's giving. And genuinely, surprisingly, there are really good influencers who have actually given us really good results, and there are influencers who have not given us results also. But that's okay. That now becomes a part of my learnings, and I know which ones to pick up for my next campaign, and these ones do well for me, but I don't even know whether tomorrow they're relevant or not. So I'll have to do my maths then again, and then see yeah, this is fine, and let's take them back again. But interestingly, as business heads also, we realized they are giving us some amount of brand credibility also. And the kind of followers these influencers have, they genuinely listen to them. They're not the ones who are just there to watch a content like an ad. So instead of running an ad, if I'm getting a similar cost per view, which an influencer would deliver for me, I'm okay to divert that money here, and see forward that. Yeah.
Got it. And Nilesh, like, because you represent again a leading performance agency, and you guys have your ears and eyes to the ground when it comes to avenues within performance. So what are some of the untapped avenues you have seen, and you've seen that brands have yet to experiment with these avenues, or brands have not really tapped onto them to the full potential? So what are some of those avenues you might have spotted, or like
Or,
something that you recommend to brands in your portfolio now?
Sure, Ritesh. So, see, I think the recommendation obviously is much more tailored to the need of the brand and the industry of the brand and so on. And fortunately, we happen to work with Ankit for a longest time, right? So number of things that he mentioned is something that we had a small contribution to that, barring the influencer part. And more recently, we worked with Smita as well, right? But I'll tell you a few things from my point of view, right? One of the biggest gap, in my opinion, is data integration, right, across channel like Smita spoke about the target setting and a goal setting, and right, and arriving at that. But more importantly, the entire attribution, interplay of the channel and so on. It's a slightly misunderstood, broadly speaking, right? Unless you are a sophisticated marketer. And data integration is still a very, very niche, right? That CRM and leads and so on, right? That you capture. How do you leverage those? And like Prashant mentioned, I think the engagement becomes key, right? So once the user has registered an interest with your brand, now how do you engage? He may not have become a customer, but how do you engage with that user? And that entire data funnel, post marketing, and that feedback loop is one of the untapped potentials. Second, I would say the emerging areas like the marketplaces, right, are big, right? They are growing really fast, especially the post-COVID, and for the brands like D2C as well. TikTok is also going through its ups and downs, but definitely is a meaningful channel, right, and making significant contribution for a number of our clients, which is still untapped, in my opinion, right, to its fullest degree. I think some brands could also leverage mWeb, right? I think many brands have gone somewhat overboard with the app, right? And app uninstall rates are genuinely really high across most of the industries. And if they can kind of when user doesn't need that app every day, right? mWeb is the best solution, right? And mWeb is probably underutilized in a number of brands actually. So those are my thoughts. I mean, the channels and mediums keep coming and evolving, right? And like Ankit mentioned, I think the Facebook and the Google remains the largest, right? So and most of the brands have kind of from the Pareto principle, they've already leveraged those 80% in some ways.
All right. And Prashant, from your understanding, do you see any untapped avenues? Because again, you work across markets, not just Indian markets, but US markets as well. So you've seen some trends back there which make a lot of sense for Indian audiences and Indian brands, but have not been tapped on.
I think, if I compare US versus India, and, Ankit actually brought this out, content marketing hasn't, I would say, it's not where the UK and US markets are currently, right? For some reason, brands are maybe overthinking it in some instances, in some conversations. Like, when we talk about content marketing, we talk about like creating, editorial content, but then, it hits glitches because then the brand wants a brand voice. And then we're like, hey, that's not editorial, that's advertorial, right? So I think there's a little bit of a opportunity there for brands to test and learn and then scale up. A good case study of one of our clients is Shopify, who we've been working with in the US for the last 4 to 5 years, and as you can see, they are a force to reckon with from a content perspective, organic content perspective. Like, they've really killed it with their content. So I think that's a good case study to look at from things that you can test and learn. The other interesting data that I got, from Facebook was that content consumption or mobile data consumption would be 78% video by 2021. Right? That's huge. That's massive. So testing out different ad formats, right? TrueView for reach versus TrueView for action across YouTube solution set, across also different solution sets on Facebook with video, I think there's a lot of potential there.
Right. And Smita, like from your vantage point, working in e-commerce companies across sectors again, you've seen some new avenues which brands have not really tapped into, or you think that like at least from a performance standpoint, like all corners are covered at this point in time?
Yeah, see, for a brand like ours, which was or is heavily into offline retail, and now going to escalate, very aggressively the e-commerce, it's quite omnipresent. So we can't like use performance and digital marketing just one versus the other. We have to make sure that it helps the overall business, right? So I think right now in the new normal, as Nilesh was mentioning, D2C. Performance marketing is something that's going to be of extreme importance, because there is a team sitting out there, there's a store which is set up, and you really can't get the consumer to the store, but you can use virtual selling, you can use their skills. You just need to get the lead and finally convert it. So I think and the kind of conversion you'll get, the kind of ASPs you'll get are even better than probably the consumer walking into the store. That's been our experience. So I think the sensibility of using some of these is going to be a lot more than it was before while it existed. So D2C for us is coming out extremely strongly as a new avenue. We are not looking at performance only to convert on digital. The other important thing that's coming across is for India especially is the whole WhatsApp commerce, right? That those plugins, taking that very seriously. We have the big daddies of Geo and Facebook coming together to do that. So today there is a bridge, really behavior in the country where they all have mobile, they are all on TikTok. But they still probably were experienced in buying offline. With WhatsApp, with D2C, that a lot of that is still merging. So I think these two are some of the things unique to India. As far as content creation goes, I think what we can learn from the West is the way they market their product, the video quality that they create around it. So what as marketers probably we've focused on is the separation of spending too much in creating assets on brand building, and whatever left money you have, you put it on a short, low cost product video. I think that needs to change. The way you present your product is of utmost importance, and especially when you're on marketplaces, on a lot of other platforms, that's the only way to sell. So really investing a lot in telling your product story is going to be key, especially for high value items like ours. And that's what we are also going to focus on.
Got it. So, like coming to the new section which we've introduced on Samosa Talks New Normal, it's something wherein I'm not asking you questions or I'm not trying to like moderate the conversations. It's me turning the tables on the panelists. So, like each one of you gets to ask a question to the other panelists. It could be to one of the panelists or all of the panelists, and this is to like again bridge the gap between, like, because we have people from the brand and the agency side here. So I think this would be quite interesting to watch and learn from. So Smita, like probably we could start with you. What is that one question you would want to ask the other panelists, and who, like, what is that one question and who would you want to ask it to?
I think definitely Nilesh, we've just started working with Socrates. So as he said, we expect the moon out of agencies. Definitely all of us do. One point that he tried to make is the attribution is going to get more and more critical, because as we increase spends, we would need to attribute it to channels. It may get more complicated. So is there some way that as agencies you're looking at improving that? Because that's most of the times the gray area. So
yeah, so see, I think barring that fundamental challenge of a duopoly in the industry, right? The Google and the Facebook ecosystem slightly differently operating, right? There are some avenues, right? Not foolproof, but there are avenues to solve for attribution challenge to an extent. Like, so we have our own adaptation of a DVM and a DCM that we use to mine the data. We typically use the lead form data, right, and map it, or CRM data as well, right, and something called CDP, customer data platform, right, that we encourage our customers to create and then link, right. So it's a significant investment, right, and most brands aren't mature yet to make that kind of investment, right, immediately. But there are approaches, right, from a post-marketing funnel linking, right, within marketing funnel, especially top of the marketing with the Facebook and the Google audience not talking with, between each other, right. That remains still a challenge, Smita. And there are, like I said, there are ways to bridge part of it, but not completely. And that's why I think when naive users say that digital is measurable, right, I would say it is not as measurable as you can believe, right? I mean, you can measure what you can see, but that's not what the real world is.
Smita, that answers your question?
Yeah, mostly. I think as we work along, the other problem that we like to solve, and that's again a big issue with people selling on marketplaces as well. There's a lot of brand and content creation happening on the other platforms, our own platforms, and a lot of sales, which increases on Amazon and Flipkart. But attribution is difficult because we advertise on those platforms as well. So somewhere that journey, probably. I don't know how, but maybe we can talk about it in detail later. But if it's easier to map that conversion, again, spends would be more justifiable. But as Nilesh mentioned, I think it's a myth that digital is measurable. Some of it we need to see in a bigger picture and overall versus just pie to pie.
Correct.
We'll move to Prashant. Prashant, what is that one question you would want to ask someone on the panel, and who would you ask it to?
So, question for Ankit, but Smita, feel free to jump in also. What performance marketing tests do you have planned for the next 3 or 6 months? Like, what are you planning to put some test budgets in to see how that works?
So I think we don't have a budget plan for like next 6 months in terms of test budget, because we keep exploring. Every single campaign gives us some insight of saying, yeah, let's experiment here. But like I said, we are definitely exploring AI and chatbots for conversion of journeys, because that's what we are seeing. A lot of brands are able to convert and work with chatbots from a conversion point of view. We are definitely looking at influencers over spending display ads. We are looking at gamification. Like I just said earlier, we're trying to see if that helps us, because it's not necessary that someone has to come and just take my product. It's okay if someone is on my platform and enjoying himself, because it's not genuinely or always about a sale that I make immediately. And I'll just give you a very interesting connotation that I keep thinking about. So platforms like Facebook, TikTok, or Google are the ones who created audiences, and now they're struggling to sell. We are the ones who have products, and we are struggling to create content. Get audiences. So I think both of the ecosystems are trying their best to. So if you look at Google, Facebook, they're trying to just bring in products and how they could just make business out of their own platforms. And as as product owners and as business houses, we are trying to see how do we start building that audience and that loyal audience with us. Yeah, so I think that's what it is, and these are the things that we're trying to do. And I like I said, there is no cap to it, and we don't have a plan for like 6 months. Maybe second, third month we realize there's something. This is what is picking up. We are happy to jump on and figure it out and try to see if we can learn from that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, just to add to to your question, I think what would be interesting for us to experiment on is not only use your own network and your own advertising, but also look at partnerships, because I think brand partnerships on digital will play a key role. And there are a lot of, as Ankit is saying, while Google and Facebook create audiences, there are a lot of other brands who are in the business of creating some sort of association with a particular category. So for us,
Yeah, I think synergies work a lot. You're right. Synergies will actually work a lot.
yeah, so I think taking your offline learnings that we've been used to in doing co-branded promotions and co-branded sales, probably that's something that'll be interesting for us to look at.
Very cool.
That answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Nilesh, what is your question and to whom it is addressed to?
One area that we spoke about, which is on the engagement, right? I'm just wondering whether Ankit and Smita have thought about perhaps building some sort of loyalty program for its users, and or are they thinking about it in? Are you guys there? Sorry, I got some message saying.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, looks like I'm back. Yeah, so if there is a plan of building one in the coming year.
Smita, are you answering, or you want me to? Should I take this up?
You can take it up. I can add to it later.
Okay. So I think like you were talking, engagement is going to be the key, because how much will you keep acquiring new audience, which is very important to you know engage with your current base who and try to see how you can um, keep them liking your product, and b, keep them engaged, and c, upsell and cross sell will definitely come in the picture once you have an audience there. From loyalty point of view, yes, Dhani has a very strong loyalty program. It's called as a Dhani Cash program. It is similar to the e-commerce model, like the Flipkart has a super coins and Amazon has something else. We have a Dhani Cash program. It is super active. It has about 3 million customers right now on the loyalty program that we have, and it rewards people very interestingly on paying your EMIs on time. So it's basically so our loyalty program is more or less of rewarding program or rewarding customers on showing good behavior, good financial behavior, which could be on paying EMIs on the date, and you get even better rewards if you pay your EMIs before the date, so that you're actually rewarding them. You get reward points on doing transactions on our app. That's the least we could do, and that's the hygiene we need to do, and that is there. Plus, earning cashbacks and all of these, earning these points, and Honey Cash is also very simple. You play games, you watch something, you refer, you do something. So there are multiple easier ways. So yeah, so that's how it's worked. But yeah, we're somewhere on it.
Yeah, just to quickly add to that, I think loyalty is definitely crucial. For our category, it'll be slightly different. We'll have to think about it because it's not like apparel where repeat purchases often. So the way to structure it will surely be different. And it'll be probably to build an ecosystem of word of mouth kind of loyalty versus just purchase.
Right.
But it is definitely a crucial parameter for the brand to grow.
Yeah, and Hitesh, you were asking of one important untapped revenue is referrals. If people are not using referrals at this point in time, is also you could definitely look at referrals as a program. Yeah.
Yeah, just to add one more from me as well, hyperlocal, in my opinion, is also a little bit untapped, right? Especially now in the post-COVID world. I think Smita mentioned earlier, obviously there was walk-in and therefore it was easier. Now, I think walk-ins need to be scheduled to ensure the social distancing and so on, right? So we are working with a set of partners, right, to create ads with a walk-in scheduler, right, or rather appointment scheduler in the ad itself, for example. So that's one of the untapped potential as well.
Ankit, like your question to the panel, and like if it is for someone specific or for the panel at large.
Yeah, so I think I'll put this question to Prashant or Nilesh, whoever the interesting thing that we all are going through is what's the role of an agency and what's the role of your internal teams, and how do you because a lot of brands are now moving to, and a lot of e-commerce players and a lot of new startups are now moving to having in-house specialized teams, which include a lot of capabilities in-house. And as brand owners, we are definitely open to exploring everything possible which works for us. So as agency owners and agency business heads, how do you think should be the right balance, and where do you think I mean, yeah, just your thoughts on this point.
So maybe I can jump in here, Nilesh, and so I don't think it's a one size fits all, Ankit, right? So different brands are on different journeys of their end point or pie in the sky, right? If you are a 15 people startup that's just entered the market, you're at a very different journey. If you're somewhere in the middle, there are like 5 competitors, you're somewhere you're the 6th or 7th, or you're the first player in that market, right? So it has, like, I would say it's not a one size fits all in all of these. In some instances, where you are very new or you're lagging within your brand index, you're playing catch up. I think an agency can add a lot of experience and value straight off the bat. I wouldn't actually go into agency versus in-house, but because again, there's so many different variations there, right? Like, for example, the banking and the BFSI segment we've heard a number of times is a little, stayed for some people. So building out those huge teams within those big companies, even if you are, a flagship name, becomes a little tough. But if you are an interesting startup or you've got a product to market, I would say rely highly on agencies because they come with a plethora of experience. Now, if you're somewhere in the middle, right? So out of 10 players, you're fifth on the totem pole. Again, playing catch up is something that the agencies can, I would, with a confidence of 85-90% say they will help you do that. If you're one or two, you've kind of got there somehow, right? Maybe there's an agency that's helped you get there. Don't leave them, right? Don't go and don't go and
Ankit, you are listening, right?
Right, because you've got there for a reason. So it just depends on the journey. At the end of the day, if you're working with an agency, don't leave them.
Yeah.
You've like really know the belt with the question.
Well,
No, I mean, this is the hottest topic I keep hearing.
Directed it to the right folks.
Yeah.
I'll add one more kind of spin to it as well, right? I mean, see, we work with Merkle in the US, right? We are part of the group company, and we see even in the US, right? There is a reverse, right, trend in several brands now, so-called in inshoring type of, right? So a number of companies have gone through the thought of taking it in-house, perhaps at a different maturity curve. That thought is somewhat natural, right? And perhaps slightly cheaper as well, right? Especially at the US rate, right? That's probably cheaper. Now in India, first the rates are not as good as in the US, right? So that takes out one like a ROI part of base effect itself. And second is even the maturity of the company has attained at certain point at certain time, but that quickly changes as the marketing ecosystem evolves or the company like plans a new product or a service and so on, right? And suddenly you don't have a relationship and you are again in the market to fish for who can help you, right? So and I think like Prashant mentioned, I think retention of a digital talent is a major challenge, right? So even if you can build a team, right, keeping them for 3 years, 5 years, right? Yeah, we can have an offline conversation, right? So
yeah.
So that it's not really as easy as it perhaps appears, right? On a spreadsheet, it may appear like, yeah, we can create one in 2 months, 3 months, and then perhaps it can work for 3 months as well, or 6 months maybe. But I don't think the maturity is there yet. The maturity of the ecosystem, right? Ecosystem is fast evolving. It makes sense to keep that talent concentrated at the moment with the partner rather than taking that talent in-house, in my opinion.
No, I mean, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised with the response, though.
No, so,
yeah, I mean, obviously it's a self-serving response.
Another point here that I'd like to shed light on is, I think one common pitfall we do see is that tech stacks are outsourced. I think, today if we're talking digital, we're talking about digital first, we're talking about moving digital. I think tech is something that brands should invest, in my view, to bring that in-house, because you need strong tech talent to kill digital. I don't think there is even one brand or one unicorn today who has reached where they have by outsourcing tech, whether it's the likes of Shopify, whether it's like of Airbnb, whether it's Oyo, Paytm. They have reached where they have with agencies, with marketing agencies, but not tech.
Yeah.
Like, I would also like to add from a neutral standpoint, I'm neither an agency nor a brand, but I do understand that, I mean, like a brand's core business is not this part of the business, whether it's performance or creative. A brand looks at an agency when they realize that it's something which is out of their core expertise. And that is something like you can get in-house, but like Nilesh said, that like for you to retain that talent and for you to train them over a period of time, that is an investment that will go. And at the same time, your agencies are anyways updating themselves day in, day out, and they are out there in the market. They work with like tons of clients, so they would bring in more expertise to the table for sure. That's what I understand. But yeah, you should have people at your end to manage that portfolio, like to manage working with the agency to again optimize and
Yeah,
maximize opportunities
yeah,
with the agency.
yeah. I mean, my only worry is, there is so much of duplication of work that happens. That's where I want to, so my worry, and that's keeps, like from one person to second to agency, third person, then agencies, client servicing will go to the agencies and performance guy or maybe the creative guy, and then there's a designer.
Right.
The number of layers that's gone through.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
it's
see,
that's
Ankit, over there, and we can maybe talk more about this offline because I've got like a lot
yeah.
of thoughts on this. I've spoken about it across startup incubators both in the US and India. I think if you look at the US model, right, and to Nilesh's point, there's a cost differential. I think we in some areas we don't empower that one individual. Maybe it's a cost thing. I can get a lot more people, as in my experience having worked in the US and working with players. So for example, I'll give you, if we are working with a brand, they will have an internal team. Like you mentioned, there'll be certain brands that will have their
Yeah.
internal teams of SEO analyst, senior manager, okay, paid media. The entire hierarchy would be there to work with an agency like us, right? Now, not to like take away anyone's jobs here. This is just my personal view. If you've hired an agency, then you don't need so many people, so many touch points, right? Then you keep one guy who's solid in paid media. You keep one guy who you've hired who's awesome in SEO. You don't need that entire hierarchy. And this is something that I think the US does beautifully. So
Yeah.
that way, internally, you've empowered your employee to manage paid media, which becomes very interesting across multiple channels: influencer marketing, testing out affiliates, YouTube, TikTok, right? Lots to do. And then you've got organic, which that person could be a rock star in SEO and a semi rock star in social, right? So wearing maybe two hats and managing organic media for you, right? And then working with agency. But I feel if you have this entire hierarchy of 8, 9 people, then empower
Mm.
them to work for the brand.
Yeah, so I think we're there. We need to have. We don't need a heap of people here and a heap of people there. We need to have like once here we have to balance. Yeah, yeah. I think
And
that's my that's the question that I had.
and
Hitesh, over to you.
one just quick point, right? One additional thing that I think generally is missing is the so-called growth hacker, right, in the team, who is able to go across teams, right, internally, because generally. I think everybody is somewhat paralyzed and handicapped when there is a
यहाँ पे employees कम employees की बात कर रहे हैं आजकल आप add
No, but one of these 7-8 people, right, can become that, right? Actually, I think it's a more of a like I think Prashant said, it's a empowering. It's not a capability necessarily as much, because the person can be empowered to orchestrate across products and merchandise and falana and dikna, right? So right now there is no such person, right? There is a person, and then he is also just a project manager or a coordinator, right?
तुम्हारा क्या काम है तुम बैठे हो तुम ही growth hacker No, I hear you. I know. I think you're saying a very valid point. You need someone who is not doing mundane jobs and who is actually thinking, what best to do and what more to do. Yeah, you're right. I know what.
Yeah, and insights generally come across the places. So somebody has to enable that insight into the product and so on.
Yeah,
Guys, we've run past time, but there are some questions. You want to take those if you guys have time, or we can just wrap up with some closing thoughts from.
I have a hard stop in 10 minutes, so
Okay.
maybe can help with one or two questions.
Okay. So, and others, like you guys can take questions like for another 5 minutes.
Still short on time. Really have something else.
So probably we can share closing thoughts, and like you guys can check the Q&A also while while putting across your closing thoughts, you can take some points from there and answer them in your closing thoughts. So probably we can start with you, Smita. So your closing thoughts on the future of performance marketing and what is it that brands should look at in the next 6 to 8 months?
Yeah, I think set yourself long-term goals and short-term goals. Short terms is extremely short, which could also be a couple of days because the environment is very volatile and uncertain. So long-term goals should be very brand-driven, and short-term goals should marry to that. So the problem is we try to differentiate this too much, so it should be a stepping stone to your long-term goal. Goal setting, object setting, and keep mapping the success of that is going to be critical.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for that. Prashant, there are a couple of questions which are directed to you directly. There's one I can see. How does a brand differentiate affiliate and performance? Probably you could answer that and give your closing thoughts.
I mean, affiliate fits under the entire performance marketing realm. It's one of the channels that you can use. Most folks that use affiliates work on a CPA model, which is cost per acquisition. The other models within performance are CPM, which is cost per impression, and CPC, CP views, right? But affiliates are more on cost per acquisition. So you work with your affiliate network to figure out what you're willing to pay, see if they can hit that target based on running your top line, bottom line numbers per product, and run that campaign on a cost per acquisition, which means only when someone buys your product will you pay the affiliate. We're not very fond of that.
And like your closing thoughts on the future, the near future and the long-term future for performance as a discipline. Prashant, can you hear me?
Sorry, say that again. I couldn't. You were breaking out there.
Yeah. So I'm saying your closing thoughts on the future of performance in the near future and the long-term future as well.
I think the future. Performance has always been very KPI driven. I don't think that's going to change. I think it's going to be a lot more divulged into. I think just speaking with Ankit and Smita here, brands are looking very closely on each of their channels, what's performing, looking at drawing out Gantt charts on figuring out which KPIs fit into which marketing channels. So I think as always, we're just going to become smarter and smarter marketers because digital is the way forward, right? We're going to see that. We're going to see overtaking TV. We're going to see a dip in TV. All of that is going to happen. So I think it's basically the way forward is to get yourself smarter and smarter across these channels.
Got it. Nilesh, there's one question which I think you could answer with your closing thoughts, a bit controversial, but then I think you could answer that quite well. So there's an anonymous attendee. I don't know why they didn't put their name to it. Probably because the question is so. So they're asking, do you think in today's time, performance marketing is just a wrapper for agencies and vendors to deliver numbers at higher cost, primarily delivering via brand bidding and click fraud? So probably you could set the record straight and
yeah, I'm not sure, right, to be honest with you, myself, because the point is we don't work personally. We at Makul Sokrati we don't work on a primarily non-biddable mediums, right? So almost all of our spends are on a biddable medium, and like Prashant mentioned as well, I mean our partnership with affiliates is fairly limited, right? I don't believe that everything is fraud, right? I don't think so. It is. Like I said, the attribution, right, is definitely tricky, right? And which channel is contributing what, right? Is something that is a science that is definitely need to be mastered in a way, right? And I think Prashant earlier mentioned, right, different attribution models that we could try and so on. But I don't personally believe that everything is fraud, because we do see the value that got created for a large number of our clients, right? Many unicorns that we had a chance to be part of, right, in its growth story, right, wouldn't be there if it was just a pure fraud, because we see the numbers flowing both from a marketing funnel as well as a revenue for our clients actually. But I'm sure there is fraud, right? I don't think I'm denying that there is no fraud, but unfortunately we don't work in that ecosystem, right? For me to be able to comment on somewhat with some experience or expertise actually.
Got it. And your closing thoughts on the future?
See, I think the customer experience and how it is evolving in the short term, right, remains the short term closing thought on a how the brand should keep an eye and evolve, like Meeta mentioned, right? There are D2C mediums that were not as much in focus. Those kind of things may be untapped opportunities for the brands. In the medium long term, I think that like I mentioned, tech and data is going to play a central role, right, beyond the leveraging the platform, right, and we see the Nasdaq stocks, right, rallied before any other stocks, right? So that says that, I mean, layman users seems to know, right, which way the world is moving, while Warren Buffett probably doesn't yet, but that's where I think the focus should be, right? And I think like Ankit said, I think the great power comes with great responsibility, as it's classically said. So I think there's a lot riding on people with this title, right? Both side, agency and the brands actually.
Great. Ankit, your closing thoughts, and if you want to take some questions from the Q&A, you can, or else you can just share yourself.
I understand there's less time with everyone in hand, but just on the affiliate piece and the answer that question of wrapping, I'll just add one point. Let's see, everyone is there to outsmart you, okay? And there's definitely, when you launch a program, there are definitely people who outsmart you. So as marketers, I would leave this point in thought that, keep your ears to the ground, keep your numbers, see your data, believe in what you are seeing. Just don't do things without being thorough about your own stuff. There are enough and more tools which will give you changes in trends, and there are enough and more tools, and if you use the right kind of tools, they will give you hints and they'll give you trends. You will realize what is looking off, what is looking normal. And there is definitely organic data that you can always compare, organic funnel data that you can always compare with the paid organic data, and you can realize what kind of ratios are different. So there are multiple ways. I would just say that definitely it's not all fraud, but there would be fraudsters somewhere. But you have to be smart as marketers to identify. Now coming to the closing remarks, I think it's a superb time that we all are in, except the COVID thing. I mean, that's the unfortunate part. But as marketers and as digital fraternity of the industry, I think we are in good times, and we are there to grow. People who will put the people who will think, people who will work hard, people who will genuinely work and put in that extra effort and get that extra skill, extra learning, keep their ears and eyes open, ideas, are the ones who will survive, and the others will remain as traditional marketers. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, guys. And I'm sorry for extending this for about 20-25 minutes. But I think the audience had great takeaways, and the quality of questions also talks about that. So on closing thoughts, I understand that the need of the hour for brands and agencies, again, is to synergize more, synergize more incisively, look at different data points and come to a bigger picture rather than just looking at one part of the data that you have. And that would come from like a stronger attribution metric, which I think all of you have spoken about. I would leave this with a debatable end. I would say that for me at this point, like speaking to you guys and for speaking to even agency leaders and brand marketers across the board, I think at this point, performance marketing is the new normal. And that is what will differentiate your brand and your business from others out there. I think I'll leave that thought to all the viewers. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and thank you Ankit, Prashant, Nilesh, and Smita for sparing our time for this one. Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Nilesh.
Thanks,
And
Hitesh. Thanks,